This is Donald Parham. You're listening to Chargers Unleashed, part of the LA Football Network. Stay jiggy.
Hey, this is Chris from the second, Chargers outside linebacker, and make sure you check out Chargers Unleashed.
Shout out to Chargers Unleashed, Sebastian Joseph Day, you know the vibes, we outside.
You checking in with Mike Williams from the LA Chargers, and you're tuning in to Chargers Unleashed.
You're listening to the Chargers Unleashed podcast with your host, Dan Wolkenstein and Jake Hefner.
Welcome to another edition of Chargers Unleashed. Jake Hefner and Dale Wolkenstein here with you from the LA Football Network. Today's show, of course, is being brought to you by BetOnline, Charger Bolt Family, and Rock Solid Sports Memorabilia. If this is your first time tuning into the show, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Dan Wolkenstein, count it down with me, my friend. 17 days away.
525,600. No, 17. We're only at 17. You've gone through so many thousands. We've made it to 17, Jake. We're like in the ones now. Like next up, in a few times, we'll have single digits here in like a week.
As I said it last week, you know, three weeks, 2.5 weeks, as it gets closer, it still doesn't seem like it's that much time until the NFL draft. But I'm telling you, for those that are obsessed with it, NFL fans everywhere, these next 2.5 weeks are going to suck. And I will say that repeatedly as we get closer. Yes, absolutely sucks. We're just biting our fingernails, wanting draft day to get here, the Christmas day of the summertime or spring, technically. But, we're so close. Dan Wolkenstein, how are you, sir?
We're so close. I'm great. I hope everyone had a tremendous weekend. Easter, if you celebrate it. I hope everybody had some fun with their family, friends, loved ones, pets, you name it. Doesn't matter. I hope you guys had a great weekend. I'm doing wonderful, Jake. I'm so excited for this episode. Long overdue. We get to talk about the cornerback fits for the Los Angeles Chargers. Can't wait. We're going to get into our 5 through 1 for each of us for best fits, as well as talk about the honorable mentions, get you a couple bonus guys that we'll talk about here for you to pay attention to. I'm doing great, Jake. How was your weekend? How are you feeling? How are you liking this cornerback class?
There's a lot of guys to like in this cornerback class, my friend. And I know that on paper, when you look at the Chargers roster with Asante Samuel Jr., with Mike Davis, obviously new faces like Jasir Taylor, and then the possibility, we don't know the exact timeline of J.C. Jackson possibly returning to this lineup. You may think to yourself, like, hang on. The Chargers are stacked with cornerbacks right now. They have a good starting group. Don't put it past yourself. We know from Brandon Staley's comments following the end of the season, in his own words, you can never have enough good defensive backs. So we got a plethora of guys that we're going through today. 5 for Dan, 5 for me. All 10 of these guys are guys that we both favor. And we're putting this in the form of best fits for the team. So players like the Devon Witherspoons, the Christian Gonzalez's, the Joey Porters, you know, unfortunately, if the Chargers were in a better position, they would probably be getting more higher consideration for these players. But these 3 guys are just unfortunately going to be
Spoiler alert. If any of those 3 guys are available at 21, they are our number 1. Pick them. Run it and pick them. You're good. But, like, the chances of them not it's just not going to happen. But Joey Porter, Gonzalez, any of those 3 at the top, automatic number 1. We're going with realistic. Top fits. They would automatically be our number 1 fit for the Chargers. Would you agree?
Oh, yes, I would agree.
That's
100%.
Okay.
So, but Dan and I have kind of split this up. Obviously, Dan's going to talk about 5. I'm going to talk about 5. And there's a variety of different things that go into some of these fits because we're not just looking at outside corner. We've got some nickel cornerbacks in here that we're going to be talking about as well because still don't know if Bryce Callahan will be returning. Will the Chargers end up being comfortable putting Jasir Taylor in that position and going into his second year? But Dan, how do you want to kick this off, my friend? I know we went through this, and like I said, it's a really good cornerback class. So it was hard just narrowing the list down to 5. So we said to ourselves, okay, as opposed to the wide receiver and the edge class that we've gone in through, let's talk about some honorable mentions for some guys that actually deserve it a little bit.
All right, so let's get into it, Jake. Over under how many size be damned references we're going to have in this episode? I'm going to go 3.5. Over or under?
Well, you're going to get one here in about the next 30 seconds. That's for sure. So let's cross one off the
ad
board.
read.
Yeah,
Sure.
exactly. So let's cross at least one off the board. I'm trying to remember. So 10 between us plus 1 or 2 honorable mentions apiece. I'm going to go under.
I thought you were going over. Okay.
I'm going to go under. I'm going to go under. We'll see. I may be proven wrong. But before we jump into our best quarterback fits, we still want to remind you guys that BetOnline remains your number one source for all of your sports betting needs this season. You'll always find the latest odds, team matchup info, player news, and game trends over at BetOnline. Make sure you head on over to betonline.ag to join and receive your 50% welcome bonus with your first deposit. Just make sure to use that promo code BELIEVE. That's BLEAV to receive your rewards. BetOnline, where the game starts.
So, Jake, I think we need to start this thing off by prefacing what the Chargers need and what we're looking for, because there are a multitude of different archetypes, if you will, for cornerback in the NFL, especially in today's NFL. You mentioned at the top, JC Jackson looks great in terms of his recovery. We don't know. We're hoping, fingers crossed he comes back at some point in the season. Who knows? It's looking positive, but again, we don't know. That was a pretty gruesome injury. Time will tell. J.C. Jackson, mentioned already. Bryce Callahan, not on the team. So we don't know what's going on there. Jazeer Taylor, as of right now, is kind of in the runnings to take over his spot. Again, lots of free agency available. But just look at those corners. Mike Davis, Asante Samuel Jr., all these guys are very different archetypes. Mike Davis, lengthy, outside corner, physical, he's kind of your boundary corner. Asante Samuel Jr., cat-like instincts inside. He's one, can also play outside, but he's kind of that cat-like size be damned type. Slot corner archetype, if you will, can kind of do both. Those are the archetypes. You look at a Jazeer Taylor, slot corner all day long. Asante Samuel Jr., kind of a hybrid, probably designed more to be inside, but can do both. Mike Davis, outside, on an island. That's your guy out there. You see him kind of do his own thing. So when we go through this list, we'll kind of go through what types of corners that these guys are. But keep in mind, this is to fit different needs of the Chargers. So, Jake, let's just kick it off by going into the honorable mentions. There's a lot of people are going to be talking about why didn't you talk about so-and-so? And I can't believe you didn't mention Tre'Vius-Hodges Tomlinson or Eli Ricks. Okay, there's too many guys, to fit in this episode. So we wanted to kind of just kick off the bat. We'll go short here on a few of the guys, but honorable mentions. So the ones that are not in our top 10 best fits: Carrington Valentine, Kei'trel Clark, Eli Ricks, Cory Trice, and Tre'Vius-Hodges Tomlinson. Jake, floor is yours. Who would you like to discuss? What are some of the reasons why either they didn't make the cut in the top 10, or you want to make sure that we talk about them because while they're not in the top 10, they're still worth mentioning and guys that we should look at?
Let's just start from the top of the list here. Trey Tomlinson. Size be damned. Ding. Whatever stamp you want to prove, whatever shirt you want to put it on for him. 5'7", 178, Dan. It is so unfortunate from the standpoint that the height and the size and everything is basically what's the biggest detriment to Tomlinson right now. Because if he was coming in at 5'11", 200 pounds, there could be an argument that could be said that you could have him in a discussion with some of the top corners in this draft. He has played that well despite his deficiencies in size, played outside corner very, very well. Wherever he gets selected, he's probably going to be immediately slotted in as the nickel cornerback. But tremendous production at TCU, obviously the nephew of the great one and only LaDainian Tomlinson. And again, his style of play, Dan, I don't care how big he is. Don't care how big he is. He just plays like he's 7 feet tall. Plays aggressive, plays with very quick instincts, tremendous read and reaction, 4.4 speed that he's got in his arsenal. I just love the way that he plays the game. I think that if he was selected by the Chargers, say early day 3, if he falls that far, and the Chargers were still looking to fill a nickel spot, that would be great on so many different factors.
100% like him. You mentioned size be damned, so currently we have one tally for those who are doing the over. One guy I think we have to talk about here, Kei'trel Clark, Trey Clark, a lot of people go by. I happen to like this guy a lot. I see him as kind of a day 3 guy who you put him on the Chargers team, and I'm pumped about it. I think a little undersized, size be damned, 5'10", 180. Again, not crazy small, but definitely not what you'll see some of these guys coming up. But plays with a chip on his shoulder. Like, he brings the nasty for sure. And I see him as kind of like the inside slot corner type. Super athletic, twitched up like crazy. His reaction times are very, very good. Click and close, I think, is among the best of the smaller guys. And for his size, he does a really good job of kind of shedding blocks in run support. So I like him. I want to talk about him. He's not in our top 10, but I think he deserves some praise.
Yeah, then I'll move on to Cory Trice out of Purdue.
We both like this guy.
I love what I see from Cory Trice. This is one of the better, bigger bodied defensive backs that you're going to see in this draft class. Fantastic size at 6'3", 206, 32-inch arms as far as what you're getting on the league screen. So he's got great athleticism. And his testing, plays well, disrupts wide receivers and their routes very well. 4-year starter at Purdue, Dan, has the position versatility that you want, as he's played multiple different positions in the secondary. I just like him the more that I watch him. His physical skill set, the way that he matches up against receivers, his ability to go up and get the ball when he needs to. It's great from a variety of different reasons. But if you're looking for another bigger bodied corner to possibly take over, if the Chargers don't end up bringing back Michael Davis after this season, that would be a nice subplant to get some size back into that DB room.
Yeah, I like Cory Trice. To see him, in my opinion, as kind of like an early day 3 guy in my eyes. Ran like a high 4.4s in the 40. Not afraid to go inside. Really good aggression. Definitely has that kind of finisher ball hawk mentality. And 6'3" for a corner. And you could also do a 35-inch vertical leap. Like, I'll take it. Former safety, transition to corner. The only thing is he definitely isn't the most twitchy. Kind of has like a galloping run style. But I like him, and I want to make sure that we talk about him. 2 other guys real quick. I'll go fast. We talk about Carrington Valentine. He is a 6-foot corner. Again, probably day 3. Legit 4.4 speed. Physical corner, doesn't quit. Love seeing him kind of blitz off the edge, which he does very, very well. Very twitchy, really good instincts, and just aggressive. And one thing the Chargers fans know all too well, he does a really good job of turning his head around. Some corners we'll talk about here, that's something that they need to improve upon. Him on the other side, I think, actually does that pretty good. Last one, Eli Ricks, former LSU kid, went to Alabama. I really like him. He just looks like a corner. Again, not quite making it to the top 10 for us, but I like him. 6'2", 190. He's got a really good, strong upper body. I think he reads the quarterback's eyes really well. Kind of a long stride runner, but certainly an alpha. And he kind of has that put me on an island type vibe, and I can make the best of this. So probably another day 3 guy. We'll see. But those are kind of the honorable mentions, ones we want to kind of get into before we get to each of our top 5s. Jake, I'll let you do the honors to get into your number 5.
To preface this before we actually get into it, when it came to the order of these, and I know we're talking about best fits, we're not talking about the best corners overall. Obviously, if we were, we'd be including the likes of Witherspoon, Gonzalez, and Porter and everybody else in this. But even ranking these as far as fits goes, Dan,
painful.
This was challenging. This was really challenging because there were so many guys because of their skill set. I'm like, but I kind of like this guy just a little bit more here. But I'll start this off. Darius Rush out of South Carolina, 6'1", 198, 33 and 3/8-inch arms. Got everything that you want from a prototypical size that you see in today's cornerback class for what you would want to see as far as a boundary type corner. Ran a 4.36, was the fastest player tested out at the Senior Bowl. And that was some of where the film really was just jumping out. Outside of what he has put on tape at South Carolina, he was locking up receivers in a variety of different ways, whether it was great in mirror drills with his speed and his reaction time. You'd see him flip those hips and stay with some of those receivers. Or just from what he was doing with anticipation, because he is able to read routes and read the cornerback very, very well in his coverage. Great quickness and change of direction that he brings to the game. Again, Dan, where this all comes from, Didn't know this until we started actually looking into tape and looking into his history, but played wide receiver in high school. So obviously when you're transitioning over to a DB, that skill set's going to help you out tremendously. But again, he has, much like we were talking about with Cory Trice, has that position versatility that Brandon Staley covets in defensive back. So I think he's versatile enough. He obviously has the size and the speed that you want from a DB, plays physical. I like the aggressiveness that he brings to the game. I think he'd be a great fit if the Chargers were possibly looking to address the cornerback position, definitely on day 2 if they were looking to do it that high. But I just like the way that he plays the game. I think the Chargers need more of that in their defensive backfield, and I really like what I've seen from them.
Darius Rush, South Carolina, man, they just keep pumping out corners. Like the last few years, it's just cornerback central, it feels like. Like Darius Rush, my number 5 that I have is Garrett Williams. Not really a household name. Folks don't talk about him much, which I don't understand why. I personally really like Garrett Williams. I'm probably higher on him than others, but for good reason, in my opinion. Super rangy, kind of corner, free safety hybrid type. 5'10", 192. Honorable ACC corner, both in 2021 and 2022. To me, Jake, what stands out for him is I love his footwork. I love his ball skills. And he's just a smooth player. And you watch some of the film on him, he's really good at kind of getting to the critical point, getting to the catch point along with the receivers. I know he's 5'10", could be a bit bigger, but he plays larger than 5'10". Definitely an alpha on his team captain for Syracuse. Definitely not afraid to lay the wood. Gets downhill in a hurry. The only problem, or I guess risk you have here, I shouldn't say only, but one of the ones to monitor is he did miss half the season with a torn ACL. So something to monitor. But we've seen like ACL injuries aren't nearly as much of an issue as they have been in the past. So like it's not necessarily as much of a risk as it has been, let's say, 10 years ago. But again, Garrett Williams, love what I see from him. He kind of brings that versatility that I could see Brandon Staley really coveting along with Derek Ansley. Wouldn't mind it at all if Chargers selected Garrett Williams. Probably late day 2 would be my guess. 3rd round pick. Garrett Williams, great fit for the Chargers in my opinion. Jake, your number 4. One of the Utes, Clark Phillips. Talk about him.
I love Clark Phillips, man. I have been so excited to see what his development was going to be as we got closer to the draft, because very, very early in September, when I was bored and wanted to just start looking into prospects for this time, I flipped on the tape of Clark Phillips right at the very early part of this upcoming season. And I had to message one of our buddies from the GAC podcast, the one and only Utah alum himself, and Steve Haglund. I said, dude, at some point, we're going to have to talk about Clark Phillips. And all he replied back with was just I got you smirk, face emoji. Like, he's like, hell yeah, dude. Eventually we will. And what's so crazy about this, Dan, when you look at Clark Phillips measurables, they're almost identical from a size and weight standpoint to what Jason Barrett was when he was coming out of college. Now, there's a huge difference from the athletic testing between what Jason Barrett put up as far as what Clark Phillips put up, because obviously Clark Phillips didn't test as well as some people were hoping. But this is what I really like about Clark Phillips, because there's so many different things that outside of his physical attributes, it's what's upstairs that really just levels the playing field for all of that. Because obviously his size, I think, is going to insert him early into whatever team drafts him, early into a nickel cornerback. But he plays with such high intelligence with his instinct and aggressiveness that he plays the game with. Dan, he's got great starting experience, 31 games that he's had as a starter. Last year, 9 interceptions. 4 of them were pick sixes, had 3 interceptions in one game against Oregon State. You go back and you watch the 2 games during the season that he played against USC, brought some of his best game that you see on tape. Through 3 quarters in the game of December against Jordan Addison, locked him up. I think he only had about 13 yards through 3 quarters. So he knows how to cover him well. And hey, he grew up in Los Angeles. He's a local boy.
Hometown kid.
I mean, again, I think just a defensive back like him, while the testing numbers are not going to jump off the chart with you, I think he's just an highly intelligent, very aggressive defensive back that knows how to play the game. I think his skill set for what he already knows and has the potential to even get better. Where it's at right now at this level of his career going into the NFL, I think it's going to pay off for him in spades. I just like him because he's a very smart tactician of a defensive back.
Add 3 inches to his height, he's a round 1 corner for sure. No doubt about it. Yeah, he is a size be damned guy. Ding, ding, ding. I see him as a late round 2, probably round 3-ish. PSA, if you're a quarterback in the NFL, don't throw short to medium routes against Clark Phillips. Like, he just picks all of them. It's insane how good he is on the boundary, especially when the quarterback receiver is trying to do an out. It just doesn't work. Love his hands. I'm not going to repeat everything else you said. Can play both inside and outside. Not afraid to get dirty in the box. Love his instincts. Again, give him 2 more inches, 3 more inches. He's around 1 corner. But we're living in reality, not hypothetical. So I agree with you. Love Clark Phillips. I think he's a great corner prospect, and I would be totally down if he was on the Chargers. Jake, one guy that I want to make sure we talk about, and I really haven't heard many people, you hear the same names over and over and over and over again. But for me, a name that is not being talked about enough is Kyu Blu Kelly out of Syracuse. Now, a lot of people probably are like, who the hell is that? And those people probably haven't really looked at this quarterback class much, which is why you're here, which is great. 4.540, Jake. 45, that'd be insane. 36-inch vertical, 6'1", 190. I think he hangs his hat on ball skills. Ideal size, 6'1", 190. His dad, Brian Kelly, was a DB for a decade in the NFL. A lot of times he seems to blanket receivers. Path breakup machine. Really, really good at being aggressive at the catch point. Great combination of kind of athleticism and strength. The only negative is I wish he had this more. I wish he turned his head around. Sometimes he kind of gets lost because he's not turning his head around, and all of a sudden the receiver does something crazy and he's gone. I wish he turned his head around. But in terms of just like the archetype you're looking for, has the size, has the ball skills, has the vertical. I mean, 36-inch vertical with being 6'1", like, sign me up. Blu Kelly, honestly, nobody is talking about him, at least not as much as I think they should. Criminally underrated, in my opinion. Would be a great fit for Los Angeles Chargers. Jake, next for you. How are you feeling about your list, by the way? Do you feel good? Are you feeling confident as you're going through? Because we haven't really talked about these ahead of time.
No, I like this. And no, this is like the first time that, I know collectively we've talked about just in very fireside chats to say like, hey, who do you like in the DB room? It's like, oh yeah, I really like Garrett Williams, or oh yeah, I really like Clark Phillips. But we've never actually like really taken a deep dive until right now to hear these reasons. So all 10 of these guys, again, Dan and I are very high on, but we've never actually taken the time to hear the reasons why.
Yep.
And it's good for this from a first time coming around. And Dan, we have to remind ourselves that what type of priority and what type of mold do you think this is going to, and this is maybe even a conversation for a different day, but do you think that there is more emphasis on this position maybe than we are not talking about? Not to say like, it's going to all of a sudden be thrown up above the needs of wide receiver, edge, or tight end or anything like that. But because of the fact that you now had Derek Ansley as your new defensive coordinator to take over for Ronaldo Hill, you have Tom Donatel now stepping in as the secondary coach, and you just hired Will Harris out of Georgia Southern as the assistant secondary coach. So from a coaching standpoint, again, along with Brandon Staley now, there's been a little bit of an emphasis now that you have a former secondary coach as your main defensive coordinator.
100%.
And there's secondary tie-ins all along for this coaching staff. So is this position going to be prioritized in a different way? And whether that's from
yes,
okay, so yes. My question is it going to be not just from a priority from when the Chargers draft, but are we talking about guys who can play more of the man coverage? Because we know when J.C. Jackson finally got his opportunity where the Chargers finally said, okay, we're going to take you out of zone. We're going to bring you back into what was more naturally for you, put you in man coverage, and then unfortunately the worst happened. So I'm interested to see this because I know Brandon Staley always plays with a lot of versatility, especially in his secondary group. But I'm wondering if this is going to, if these coaching changes are going to shift this outlook for this team as far as what they're looking for.
I agree. Jake, your next guy, 2 letters in the first name, last name Turner. Talk about him.
Yes. DJ Turner, fastest man at the combine with a 4.26. Unbelievable speed and athleticism coming out of Michigan. Again, when you put on the tape of DJ Turner, he's just got great read and reaction skills. Fantastic anticipation to where the ball's going to be going, plays physical. Great production at Michigan, by the way. Had 20 passes defended. And Dan, this is kind of why I wanted to allude into this question with all the coaching changes, because he's coming from a very heavy man scheme in Michigan. And he's got that speed, obviously, running a 4.26 that could translate instantly to what you want to wide receivers nowadays in the NFL. And he does lack a little bit of the physical traits that you would want, just from size. Little on the lanky side. So you would hope that he would be a little bit heavier to be physical, but still plays the game with a good physicality that I like. But you just need to make sure that that's going to be able to translate well. But I do like what I see from him. And obviously, being in Michigan and being in that conference, he's gone up against some of the best in competition. Has it always broken his way? No, but I think it's a great experience just to be prepared for the next level at the NFL. And again, having a guy who's 4.26 speed, and I'm trying not to sound like Al Davis here and just talking about nothing but speed as it relates to DJ Turner. But again, having an asset like that in the DB room, you need something like that. But I think he's got a lot of different intangibles that he brings to the game that's going to be able to make him go up against some bigger wide receivers and have some good production.
Jake, my number 3 best fit for the Los Angeles Chargers. I'm not going to lie, I have no problem acknowledging this. Kind of have a man crush on this man. I do. And I have no problem admitting it.
Talk about it.
He has, I think, what almost every GM in the NFL now would like to see in a corner. And the guy I'm talking about, Julius Brents out of Kansas State. If you have not seen Julius Brents, now, is his tape perfect? No. Like, there's some times where he went up against a one Johnson. I think it was probably would you say Quentin Johnson's like the number, arguably top 3 wide receiver in this year's draft? Ton of tape on him going up against him. And holds his own sometimes doesn't. But 6'3", 200 pounds, runs a 4.5 340, 41.5-inch vertical. Guy's got athletic traits for days. Size, hops, agility. First team All Big 12 2022. You basically built this guy in a lab, and this is what you want. Like if you're playing Madden and you're trying to build a corner, 6'3", 200 pounds, sounds good to me. Really good in press man coverage. Love his physicality. He saw a ton of reps against Quentin Johnston, and he won some, lost some. But what you'll also see is some truck sticks all over his film. He is not afraid to get nasty. Kind of has that finishing style that I think a lot of GMs, head coaches, defensive coordinators love. You saw a ton, which I think is important for the Chargers. You saw a ton of him put on an island throughout his career, and for the most part did pretty well. One of the negatives, I will say, because I think there's always going to be something that people can improve upon, he's very aggressive, and sometimes he can get too aggressive and he can kind of lean too much on his instincts. And when that happens, he can completely wash himself out of a play and can bite, and all of a sudden, like, the guy's gone. But again, I think that comes from experience, comes with reps. But in terms of just sheer physical traits, what can you not like about this guy? I love Julius Brents, and he's one of my favorites, obviously, top 3 for me. Jake, are you as high on him as I am? I don't know why, but I'm watching him, I'm like, oh, Brent Staley would love to get his hands on him.
Yeah. The traits that he brings to the game is just what Brandon Staley would covet in a DB in his system. The versatility that he brings, as you mentioned, the size. and aggressiveness. And while it may sometimes be over aggressiveness, it's still sometimes that you would have liked to see the Chargers secondary play with a little bit more physicality. So you don't want them always necessarily being the finesse, but so you need to find that balance between intelligent and when to use
Throttle
it
it
and
back
when to
just
be
a
aggressive.
little bit, please.
Just, when it needs to be. But no, I the more I watch the Julius Brents, I really like what I see from him.
Yes, he did get toasted a couple times from Quentin Johnston. But again, like you're talking about like a stud receiver. So time will tell, but in terms of just potential, his ceiling is incredibly high. Jake, now we're getting into the good stuff. Top 2 for each of us. You're up first. Your number 2 best fit for the Los Angeles Chargers. Someone who, talk about production. My goodness, I'm excited to hear you talk about him. Emmanuel Forbes.
Dan, this is such an interesting guy to talk about in Emmanuel Forbes from Mississippi State. As you mentioned, the production. Talk about a ball hawk at Mississippi State for his 3 years as a starter. 14 interceptions and 6 pick sixes. What?
Most in history.
The production just jumps right off of the charts for that type of aspect. But Dan, I have to mention this before I really get into this because it's such I didn't know this was literally just talked about. I can't remember if Peter King had released it late yesterday or if this was early this morning, but he's been hearing a lot in the draft, from talking to people as far as where Emmanuel Forbes possibly is going to go. But he drops this nugget to say that Emmanuel Forbes played baseball in high school and was capable of throwing in the mid-90s. And while he was playing baseball, he suffers an elbow injury, and that's what ships him over to his football career. So he's got a cannon if he wants to use it, to step in for.
Watch out for the touchdown. Yep.
Be an emergency backup quarterback for Justin Herbert if you possibly need him. Who knows? But Dan, the biggest concern from him, and it's crazy because you go back right before the combine, and there were mock drafts with Emmanuel Forbes at the tail end of round 1. Mm-hmm. A lot of people had him as a round 1 quarterback for sure.
Totally.
But when you come in at 6 foot, you weighed in at 166 at the combine, 170 at your pro day.
Tiny.
Having that slender frame, again, hey, I know it's advantageous when you run a 4.35 40. I get all that. But a slender frame going to the next level like this. And I know that Emmanuel Forbes has addressed this plenty of times. He believes that he can get up to around the 180 mark and maintain that weight. But it is something that I'm sure that are going to turn a few coaches and GMs away from it. So I'm interested to see where he's going to go. I don't think that he's going to make it out of day 2, personally. I think because everything else that he brings to the game, as far as his ball capabilities and his football intelligence, he is so smart as a defensive back. When you watch him diagnosing plays, reading the quarterback while also covering his wide receiver routes, he is phenomenal when he does this. So I'm just wondering what coach is going to end up taking a chance on him, because if you can put aside the weight concerns, you're getting a damn good football player at the next level.
It's funny. I have not heard him kind of reference the size questions. And so when I was going through my notes, one of the things I literally have with him is, I would love it if he just gained like 10 pounds. And that's exactly going from 170 to 180. It is hard not to like Emmanuel Forbes. 6 foot 180 is ideal in my opinion. The kid has obvious nose for the football. I mentioned it, most pick sixes in FBS history. IQ is great, blankets receivers. Like, there's so many things that are positive. It's just like the one thing. It kind of reminds me of like the Tank Dell stuff in receivers. Like, but the size. Like, again, give him 20, 30 more pounds. Guy's an easy top 15 pick. But that's not reality. I love Emmanuel Forbes. I think he would be great. Again, and all these guys, I could just imagine the Chargers would be gushing to get some time with. Emmanuel Forbes, I like. My number 2, Jake, and I really like this guy. And it really makes this hard for me because one of the things that I think Chargers fans are desperate for, and I think Chargers themselves are desperate for, is obviously they want to win a championship, but like championship pedigree, I think is something that breeds success in the NFL. And you saw it last year, like what Kyle Van Noy brought to this team from a leadership perspective. Like you see Super Bowl winning players and what they bring to a team. Kelee Ringo, I mean, has this in spades. 2-time national champion for the Georgia Bulldogs. 6'2", 207. Like in my eyes, Jake, like this is the perfect size corner physically. 6'2", 207, ran a 4.36 40, 33.5-inch vertical leap. Second team All ACC. Track background, won the Arizona State Championships for both the 100-meter and 200-meter dashes in high school. He had the pick six that basically ended the national championship game on Bryce Young against Alabama 2 years ago. The guy is just smooth like butter, man. I love Kelee Ringo, and I think his physicality is arguably elite, and I think goes well for like a Ringo Island type. Imagine him on the boundary by himself. He just looks like an NFL corner, and I think I could see him great as kind of an inside the box as well. Plus tackler and run coverage, sheds blocks really well. Again, in the SEC, against those wide receivers, twitched up, great in man coverage, press, zone, really high IQ. Jake, if this guy's there in the second round, which again, it's a stretch, I might be sprinting. I love Kelee Ringo. Now, is he a surefire round one pick? I don't know. I think it's kind of like a back end of round one possibility, but Kelee Ringo, Jake, like, yes, please. Very much, yes, please. Where do you have him on your list? Like, is he in that top tier? Do you have him in your, let's say your top 10, for example? Is he in your top 3?
Kelee Ringo again as another guy, much like Emmanuel Forbes, who has seen such a fluctuation with where his whole pre-draft stock was at, say, a month and a half ago. And now just from reports, testing, whatnot, people just have him as a straight day 2 player. So I don't think that he falls. I definitely don't think that he gets out of day 2. Probably doesn't get out of round 2 with the board as far as what it's going to look like, even though that many people expect that to be the round that people are going to go berserko over the wide receivers. But I definitely think that Kelee Ringo, again, you're playing out of Georgia, you got some talent. He's going to be able to. He just needs to, whoever drafts him just needs to know how to use him correctly, properly at the beginning of his NFL career. I think he's got plenty of potential to flourish. So I don't see him getting out of round 2. I'd be surprised by that personally if he did.
There's no way.
But we'll see.
We talked about the Chargers and Georgia. Jamari Sawyer, Trey McKitty, just these past 2 years alone. Oh man, this is the one where I'm almost calling my shot round 2 guy. Like if he is there at round 2, depending on where they go, round 1.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, we are not putting corner as a priority above wide receiver, edge, tight end. But we know this coach, what he has said. We fully believe that he's going to address the cornerback position in some form or fashion in this draft. But I think it would have to be a certain scenario for them to address it either in round 1 or round 2.
And again, it goes back to the value. Like, and there are many instances where a BPA would be corner in round 2 over, say, wide receiver or edge. So, like, it's not out of the question.
I think the most realistic conversation to start having as it relates to cornerback in this class, Dan, would probably be starting at round 3 and then go down from there.
Yeah, I would say the only way it happens in round 2 or 1 is if somebody falls in their lap. Like if you see a Joey Porter there at 21 somehow, if you see a Ringo there somehow, or like a guy that we're going to be talking about here in a second, that's how it happens in round 1 or 2. Otherwise, you're right. I think the value starts happening later. Jake, you ready for your number 1? How does, before you get into him, talk about how he differs from the other ones. Like what makes him the number 1 versus 2 through 5 or honorable mention?
I mean, Athletically, he's dripping in athletic sweat, man. He's got outrageous athleticism for a DB. And even coming in at 6'1" at 200 pounds, ran a 4.35 at the combine. Deon Banks also decided, hey, I can run fast, but I can also jump 42 inches. And let me show him what I could do with an 11.4 broad jump as well. It's just, what? I mean, talk about just ridiculous athletic defensive back, Dan. Now, we were just talking about it 2 seconds ago. What's the realistic option for the Chargers to really start having the conversation of going the cornerback route? If you choose to address that, that would probably be starting in round 3. Deonte Banks should not be getting at 21. Let's keep everything relative.
Thank you.
He should definitely be going in the top 20 for sure. Should not be there for the Chargers to select at round 1.
Oh,
I don't believe he shouldn't. He shouldn't buy.
I thought you were saying he shouldn't be the pick at 21.
No. Not that he shouldn't be the pick at 21.
Oh, I don't think he should be the pick at 21 either. But
what I was basically going to say, much like in the case of like Joey Porter, you were about to say, like, if a guy like that fell to you, I feel like you should possibly give it some consideration.
Sure.
Much in the way that we would probably talk about Brian Branch as another exception from the safety market in that circumstance.
Which we're not talking about as a corner. Obviously, he would be in this list if we had him as a corner.
He could play corner,
yeah,
but we'll keep him for the safety list when we talk about that. But yes, this Deonte Banks will probably not be there by 21.
Interesting.
He just brings those type of athletic abilities that defensive coordinators salivate on. Plays physical, tackles great. Dan, if you've watched him, some of his highlights, go to the Ohio State game. You really want a good example about how Deonte Banks goes up against wide receivers. Play is taking place. You get that 5-yard window that cornerbacks can put their hands on wide receivers to try to bust them off their routes. He literally the wide receiver only gets 2 yards in going to his route. And Deonte Banks just literally stalls him and then pushes him back like 3 yards. Just
You're going the wrong way.
Doesn't allow him to get anywhere. So on top of all that physicality, he plays with great instincts, can play in both press or in zone coverage very, very well. I like him the more that I've watched him, much in the Julius Brents conversation of that. The more tape you watch of him, the more that you like him. And again, just a physical cornerback that plays well in both type coverages, which sometimes the Chargers have not always hit on when you're talking about different defensive schemes. And again, to have athletic ability like this, get the hell out of here, man. I love what I watch when I see Deonte Banks.
Yeah, I really like Deonte Banks, obviously in my top 10 as well.
P.S. I also noticed that you put Syracuse down here under Deonte Banks instead of Maryland, but it's all right. It's all right.
That's a slip of the tongue.
At least your picture was correct, Wolkenstein. That
Thank
works.
you.
It's
Thank
okay.
you.
A little technical snafu there.
If people are listening, I'm probably going to have this visual fixed so that way you can't even see it. But hey, if you didn't know, now you know. No, I love Deonte Banks. Kid's a star. I think you're higher on him than I am, but that's okay. 6'1", 200, plays a good length, super scrappy, great instincts. Look, I wouldn't be upset. Would I be upset if they picked him at 21? Personally? Yes.
You would.
I would. Because I'm not getting into it. Yes, I would be upset. All right, Jake. So
I'm pretty sure a lot of Chargers fans that even if he was on the board, with everything that we have talked about this entire offseason, about wide receivers, about the edge class, about the tight end class, and then all of a sudden here comes a curveball from the Chargers. Nope, we're going DB. That's what's happening.
Could you imagine?
I was so upset right now. I literally just knocked my picture off my desk.
Number 1 on my list, Jake, South Carolina. Take a shot if you heard that college again. 6 foot, 190, 01 Cam Smith. 4.43 40, 38-inch vertical. This kid is chiseled, my goodness. Jake, I don't know if you heard.
Well, first of all, I was going to say, I like the fact that you did not. I knew who your 5 were, but I didn't know how you were actually ranking them.
Oh.
And I was not expecting that Cam Smith was going to be your number 1 guy. So I'm interested to see you pound the table for this.
Yes. So the kid's chiseled. And I don't know if you saw this, but there were rumors, not getting specifics, but there were rumors out there on the interwebs about the Los Angeles Chargers head coach at the clinic in Oregon recently. and was asked questions around why did the team not fare well in the playoffs, and how this Chargers team compared to his elite defenses with the Rams. And rumor out there that there was mention of, those corners that played for the Rams were great tacklers. Now, is it true? Should that be public? I don't know, but that's just what I've seen. If you're looking for someone who's a corner who can tackle, Cam Smith is arguably up there with the best of them. With those top three we talked about, Cam Smith is right there. And he could be there. And I think he will be there at 21. Now, he should be there at 21.
I was going to say, 21 would be a little bit too high.
This is one of those guys where if he's there at 54, somehow, this is like an Asante Samuel Jr. type
more
thing
realistic. There we go.
If he's there at 54, between him and Ringo, I think he'd win. I think he'd win out. I think if he went and talked to Staley and talked to Ansley and said, okay, of these two guys, if they're both here somehow, some way, pipe dream, I think Cam Smith wins. Such a smooth athlete. I love his instincts. And one of the things that I saw this with Asante Samuel Jr. as well is it oftentimes looked like he's running the receiver's routes, where the quarterback oftentimes looks like he's throwing to him, which is that's probably one of the best compliments you can give a corner. Great footwork. I think his technique is amongst the best in this entire class. I think he does a really good job of reading the quarterback's eyes. And oftentimes, Jake, he almost baits quarterbacks when he plays off man, where he'll kind of give almost enough space where the quarterback's like, yes, I'm throwing this here. And then immediately he just clicks and closes and it's gone. So I love his instincts. Great at the point of conflict. Again, I think sometimes the aggressiveness can get the best of people. This is another time he can sometimes get a little handsy, which I think worked in college football a bit, although he did get flagged a bunch in college football. But in the NFL, especially in an offensive league, if you do that in the NFL, you're going to get called a lot. Again, I think that could be coached out of him. But I love Cam Smith. And I think the fit there for the Chargers is gushing. And if I'm Derek Ansley and if I'm Brandon Staley and he's sitting there at 54, or let's say that we somehow does a trade and you're there, I don't know, in the mid 40s, you're getting a stud with Cam Smith. And again, I'm not saying he's necessarily the best corner in this class, but for the guys that we see available, not those top three, I think Cam Smith is the guy. Am I wrong?
I think I would feel more comfortable if the Chargers traded back, acquired an additional second or a third round pick to make a selection like this. Now, if the Chargers stayed put, didn't execute a trade, stayed with 21, 54, 85, I think you'd have to lean with their biggest needs that they need to address on this team as it stands right now. But in that particular circumstance, which a lot of the lines, the stars have been aligning towards the Chargers executing a trade back. It would be very, very smart of them, not just from a personnel standpoint, but from a financial standpoint as well. I would love to see a move like that. First off, obviously, if the Chargers trade down, I'm going to be doing cartwheels in the living room. But
regardless of who they pick,
this is one of the luxuries that a trade down gets you to go a little bit more position diverse and
2-for-1 special.
Yes, and use a higher draft, more draft capital on a different position that is more of a luxury for what you need right now, but still in a way to bolster that secondary group.
Look, I love Cam Smith. I think I think you're right. If this is a trade down situation, I'm sprinting. I think he'd be great. And I think he's a good fit for the Chargers' need. Again, security blanket, insurance policy, depending on what happens with J.C. Jackson, we don't know. Cam Smith is a great one. Jake, we've made it through each of our top fives. Again, we'll kind of do the quick recap here. Jake's number 5, we've got Banks. Excuse me, not Banks. He's number 1. Number 5, we've got Darius Rush. We've got Clark Phillips, DJ Turner, Emmanuel Forbes, and finally, Banks. Sorry, my bad.
Yes.
My top 5, we've got My number one, I'll start the other way. My number one will be a Cam Smith. Number two, Kelee Ringo. Number three, Julius Brents. Number four, we've got Kyu Blu Kelly. And number five, we've got Garrett Williams. Again, different archetypes, different types of styles that you can have on the football field. All of these guys I can see the Chargers going after. Okay, so Jake, real quick, if we're looking at these, and let's say we're going day one, day two, day three. Day one, if there's a cornerback that the Chargers get on day one, is it any of these, or are they passing?
If the Chargers, let's just say in this circumstance as it relates to this list, because you would assume that obviously Witherspoon, Gonzalez, and Porter are off the board.
Yep.
I think if it was down to Deonte Banks and the field, I personally think that the Chargers would choose the field, honestly.
So no corners probably in round one.
So most likely no corners round one, even though as much as I like Deonte Banks.
Of this group. Yep.
Of this group. I think the only exception the Chargers would make if the corner was there at 21 would have been Joey Porter if he ended up going to 21. Round two. So
who's your guy? Who do you predict if round two, let's say they stay at 54 for now?
I mean, I think that Emmanuel Forbes will probably be gone before 54. I think there will be a team that, regardless of his frame, will take a chance on him before the Chargers select again. Again, we're talking in anticipation if the Chargers is stick and pick and do not have any additional day two picks from trading back. I think more realistically, if you wanted to talk about a corner, again, I'm just going off of my list here. I think a sweet spot for 54, if he still happened to be there, would be Clark Phillips if they were to address the cornerback situation there. In round three.
Or you can say, if you want to do day three, that's fine.
I mean, day three, we're probably then getting back into our honorable mention picks if we're talking that. I'd probably say any combination of Rush and Clark Phillips that could be taken in between round two, and actually probably both Rush and Phillips would probably be off the board by the end of round two anyways. So really doesn't leave.
Trice might be the guy.
Trice, I'd be interested to see if anybody elevates him into round three, given his physical attributes. I still kind of have him as a fringe day two, day three type of a guy, but I still think probably as it stands right now with the Chargers not having any additional picks and with the needs that they already know that they have to address in this upcoming draft, you probably don't see this cornerback group or the cornerback position being addressed until at least round three.
Unless one of those guys falls.
Right.
Which we did not expect Rashawn Slater to be there at 13 a few years ago. Or Asante Samuel Jr. later on. Like, that's what happens. When that happens, everything else is off the board. You're just like, all right, well, hey, in our lap, here we go. Jake, made it through. Cornerback, best fits for the Los Angeles Chargers. 5 through 1 for each of us, plus honorable mentions. What is the next position we got to get into? Because again, we're like getting close. We got,
we spent the last two position fits talking about the edge class, then going to the secondary.
Oh, you want to give what the people want, don't you?
Yeah, everybody's been saying, it's like, what in the hell are we talking about these defensive players? Can we please go back to the offense?
Who talks like that? Who talks?
I don't know. I don't know, but I'm picturing
angry.
I'm picturing just a bunch of angry people behind the screen. Just yeah. So let's flip it back over to the offensive side of the ball. So we already talked about wide receivers. That was our first prospect group that we broke down. So, Dan, I think we kind of need to go back to, again, one of the glaring...
Fullback. Are you going fullback?
Definitely. Definitely. We need competition for Xander Horvath on this team. No question about it. Huge need. Cool. Huge need. No, I think we should go back to... I think we should take a look at our best fits for the tight end group, because obviously this is a very big and talented tight end group this year. And there's been some, changing of the guard as far as 2 months ago, where everybody believed that the Chargers were no question going to go at 21, that it had to be either a wide receiver and a tight end. And now their perspective is kind of, it's kind of changed a little bit. You kind of feel like because the Chargers have the same tight end group that they had last year, that you could possibly wait until round 2 or round 3 to address that position. So it's going to make for some good talk.
Well, I can't wait. We're going to get there. But before we get that, we got a couple other episodes coming out here in a bit. Some of the latest breaking news and rumors, some discussions that Jake and I have that I think you guys are going to be interested in. Tons of fun. If you have not already, please hit the like and subscribe. Helps out a ton.
Tell them why, Dan. Tell them why. We still technically haven't officially announced it. Is this the right time that we should do it before we release the details to Twitter?
We could. You would get to see Jake and my ugly mugs if you do subscribe and hit that like button. You can see us all the time. No, that's not it.
It'll probably actually only just relate to everybody that we know that will subscribe to say, okay, they listen to the podcast for the full hour. And that's how you can know which people did.
Yeah. You get 13,464 extra brownie points if you can get on this before anyone else does, which means you listen to the end of the show. Greatly appreciated. We are doing a giveaway. You mentioned the offense. Let's give away something from the offense. Jake, you've got a signed Keenan Allen authentic jersey, custom jersey we're going to be giving out. We'll put the details out on Twitter and social media here in a bit, but we'll probably announce the winner, I believe, draft day, right? Are we doing it on our live show?
Day before the draft day, we will announce the winner. So April 26th, keep your eyes peeled. That'll be when the winner is announced for the signed Keenan Allen jersey. Obviously, all you got to do, like and subscribe. And Dan, are we having him put a comment on there, or are we just going to keep it simple?
Let's keep it simple.
Keep it simple. Like and subscribe. Very simple.
That's the KISS principle. Keep it simple, stupid. All you got to do is like and subscribe on YouTube, and we're good to go. Jake, got a lot of fun stuff happening. Be on the lookout. We're going to have a live show for the NFL draft prior to the start of round one. Can't wait. You'll see a bunch of LAFB representing in that. Jake, anything else want to tell the great friends before we get on out of here?
Again, the DeLorean needs to park just right out here. Right out here and take me to April 27th. Let's go.
DeLorean's over there. Take you over there.
Yes. Literally, just drive 88 miles an hour down the same street. Just teleport me 3 weeks in time right now.
Random question, Jake. If you had the DeLorean show up as an Uber, who do you want the driver to be?
Oh, it's Michael J. Fox. There's nobody driving that damn DeLorean that is going to be able to usurp either. And would you say, Doc Brown, so you could hear all the quirkiness? He'd probably be like 1B, but it's Jay Fox, baby. It's Jay Fox all the way.
I love it. For Jake Hefner, you can find him at Jake T. Hefner, myself at Dan W. Sports. Guys, gals, pets, thank you so much for tuning in to Chargers Unleashed. We'll talk to you next time as we go into more Chargers content. Can't wait. Have a great rest of the evening, afternoon, morning, wherever you are. And we'll talk to you soon on the next Chargers Unleashed.